Let's see releases of FPC Deluxe. So we are now going to the latest release. These are the binary tools. This is a pre-release we don't use. So we have here the latest release 2.4.0C. And we are going to use the 32 bits version of FPC Deluxe for Windows because it allows for easy cross-compiling to all targets. Okay, let's go to the download. So here it is, FPC Deluxe. Now, to make life easy, I have made on the local C disk, I've made a special folder called FPC Up Install. Now I'm going to create a folder inside this folder for our install, and I call it stable because we are going to install the stable versions of FPC and Lazarus. Inside the stable folder, here we will put our install of FPC and Lazarus. I create another folder, and that's my personal preference. I call this folder up, and I will place FPC Up Deluxe inside this folder. And the way I do it is that all the sources and binaries are placed in this stable directory. And it will contain its own version of FPC Up Deluxe so that it will not ever influence or destroy another install. So I will make, within 1.5 hours, I'll make another install that will be trunk. I will show it again, or main, but I use the old name. I will install the latest version. I will call it trunk. And I will make again a folder called up. And if I'm going to install trunk, I will place inside this folder its own version of FPC Up Deluxe. But I'm now going back to stable. Inside this directory, I will run FPC Up Deluxe. Well, run anyway. Okay, we don't need that all the information are sent to a central server for this exercise, so just say no, and I'm going to set the install path to stable and select folder. So here you can see this version of FPC Up Deluxe will install FPC and Lazarus in the stable folder. Now it's very easy. The next step will only be this. Yes. And this will take a couple of minutes because it will download some binary tools. It will download the bootstrapper. It will download the sources from FPC and Lazarus. But we will keep it running and just wait until it's finished. What you can see now, it's a small detail. Git, when downloading from Git, the download can be very big because you get all the history of Git downloaded on your personal computer, on your own personal computer inside the install directory. But if you download stable versions of FPC and Lazarus, it will use the trick of depth 1. So because stable versions will never be changed nor updated, you don't need the whole history of this version. So you see that the download of the sources of FPC is already finished. That was very quick. And now it's downloading all kinds of tools needed to compile FPC. And I will show you. So this is happening inside the up directory. So it created the file devmods and FPC up, some small files. We go one directory up. And you see FPC up has created inside the stable directory a lot of extra directories. The CCR, the central component repository, that's empty because we don't have any packages now. FPC is the binary directory where the compiled binaries of FPC will be placed. It's empty now because it's only cleaning now. It's not started compiling. This is the bootstrap directory. And here you can see the tools that are needed to do all the beautiful stuff on Windows. This is the Bootstrap compiler that is downloaded, the fitting Bootstrap compiler, and all the other tools that are downloaded from GitLab. So everything, all these tools are downloaded from GitLab, from FPC, and some extra tools are downloaded from various sources on the internet. It's all done more or less by magic. And these are the sources. They are already there. And after cleaning, you see that the sources are now cleaned, just to be sure. And the compilation project procedure has now started. You see that it uses the PPC 386.exe Bootstrap compiler from the Bootstrap directory. This one, it was downloaded by FPC at Deluxe, and it's now compiling the FPC sources. If we had any patches, for instance, for FPC, we could have placed them here, but we don't have patches because it's stable, it's okay. Well, here are two files also that are needed to keep track of all changes, and we can see that the FPC version that we are using now is release 3.2.2, and it has a git hash. This is the git hash that is used on GitLab to identify this release. Okay, so still running. Sources, nothing happening here because it's just compiling the compiler itself. And let's see if all goes well. Right. Dear viewers, you can see on the screen that is now going to build a compiler targeting the 46-bit Windows 64, I mean 64-bit Windows 64. So this means that although we are running a 32-bit version of FPC at Deluxe that will install a 30-bit version of Lazarus and FPC, it will also magically install 64-bit compiler, so you can target both Win 32-bit and Win 64-bit executables with only a single Lazarus version. So this is our first example of cross-compiling. Again, to be clear, we are installing a 32-bit version of FPC and Lazarus, and with that version we can create 32-bit executables for Windows and 64-bit executables for Windows, due to the fact that FPC Deluxe is now installing a 32-bit to 64-bit cross-compiler that can be used by Lazarus in a later stage. All right, I'm going to go to the binary directory because I expect the FPC binary directory, I expect it to be filled with freshly compiled FPC, and let's see if I'm correct. Yes, all kinds of FPC, nice FPC executables. Here we have the main fpc.exe executable. We have here the main configuration file for FPC, and all other tools are here available. And at this moment, we see the 32-bit compiler and the 64-bit compiler to target 64-bit executables for Windows. So both are present. And now if we go back to FPC and we go to the units, we see that the units for the 32-bit are already there. And I guess this is still empty. So the units that are used by FPC for targeting 64-bit Windows will be placed here. Still taking some time. So the whole process of building FPC from sources has gone well. We have a working 32-bit version of FPC with all that is needed to compile. And with that version, it is now making a cross compiler for the 64-bit. Let's see how it. Yep, all still going well. And you can here see in this screen, it will give you some information about what FPC is doing. Also, if there are encountered errors, they will be reported here. It's all there and will be updated live. Packages are now compiled for 64-bit Windows. Many users ask me why I use a 32-bit version of FPC on a 64-bit version of Windows. And that is due to the fact that it is better for cross-compilation, better suited for cross-compilation, because it is hard to cross-compile from a 64-bit version of FPC to 32-bit operating systems, like if you want to run software on a Raspberry Pi 3 or 2 and you are in 32-bit, then it is a bit hard to cross-compile from 62-bit to 32-bit, and it's very easy to compile from 32-bit to 32-bit. So that's why we always start with a 32-bit compiler, and with that 32-bit compiler we can target 32-bit and 64-bit in a very easy way. This is also the advice by the developers of FPC itself. Always use the 32-bit because it makes cross-compiling to all other targets very easy. Alrighty, it has finished with the 64-bit cross-compiler, and let's see if we have some units in this directory that I showed you. And yes, it is filled with all kinds of units that are targeting the 64-bit version of Windows, and here are the units for the 32-bit version. So the whole process of installing FPC, and that is installed in this binary directory, has completed successfully. And as we are looking now at FPC Deluxe, it is now compiling Lazarus in a few steps, individual steps. So first it is building, as you can here see, last build. Yeah, letters are a bit small. Yeah, it's building last build, and with last build it will build Lazarus and start Lazarus and everything else concerning Lazarus. So that's the first step we will do. And as you always also have seen, that downloading the sources of Lazarus also went very fast. Here are the sources, because again we are using a stable version of Lazarus. There is never a need. The sources of a stable version of Lazarus will never be changed, and so there's no need to download the whole history of this version. So we can do a flat download, or a download with that one of the Lazarus sources, so it is fast and small. If we look at now, for instance, if we look at the properties here, FPC, we can see it's not that big. It's 400 megabytes, and if we download the whole trunk version of FPC, it will be much bigger, but we will see that in a later stage. Okay, going back to the last build. So we have successfully, as you can see here, we have successfully built last build, and now we are going to build the user IDE with that tool last build. You can see here in the Lazarus directory that we have the tool. As you can see here, the tool last build is there, and we are using that to build Lazarus itself. Okay. Lazarus is now built. Now start Lazarus will be built. That's another additional program used by Lazarus. All right, and as an extra feature, FPC Deluxe will now rebuild Lazarus with some extra default packages, and these packages are called suggested packages. And if you go to the up directory and we go to the settings, we go to the settings file. I'm going to show you the details, but you can forget them. this name. It is now installing this module with the name suggested packages. And you can see that it adds a database package and an FPC unit and a last daemon and a leak view, and the charge will be added and Kodi. And all these packages are now added into Lazarus as a default because, you know, the daytime controls and external help and all these things are now installed by magic into Lazarus. Otherwise, it would have been a very small and lean version of Lazarus. So now linking again, the extended version of Lazarus. It's now building the Lazarus component library targeting Windows 64. So it's the same process as with the FPC compiler. The whole of Lazarus is now ready, and FPC Deluxe is also now compiling the 64-bit version of LCL, the Lazarus component library for Windows, targeting Windows 64-bit. We have here already a nice icon on our desktop created by FPC Deluxe. We don't touch it now because FPC Deluxe is not yet ready. And if this is finished, it will be ready for use. So first, let's wait if everything goes well. Okay, the installation by FPC Deluxe complete. Everything went well, and this is very important. Lazarus must be started with the desktop shortcut. That is important because then Lazarus will be pointed to the right configuration files and will work flawless. Okay, I will close FPC Deluxe. Now we have inside the stable directory, FPC Deluxe has created a lot of extra directories with Lazarus, FPC sources. Let's see if we can get a working Lazarus version with what we just have done. And here we have a working version of Lazarus with the last controls, SQLite, DB, SynEdit, that are the basic, the suggested packages that have been added. Just add a button and try to compile it and see if everything works. So now we have a 32-bit, it works, we have a 32-bit, we have made a 32-bit application with Lazarus, so the whole install is correct. Now, if I want to make this Windows 64, I go to Configuration and Target, I choose, let me see, I choose Windows 64, and I choose the right processor, the 64-bit processor. I press OK, and now I'm trying to compile a 64-bit version of my application, and here it is. So this is the 64-bit version of my application. As you can see, it all is very easy now. So we have a working version of stable FPC with stable Lazarus. Can we see here 3.2.2 of today, and everything is fine. The same you would get if you would have downloaded the versions of FPC and Lazarus from the website of Lazarus itself. We are not going to save anything. Okay. Now, now we are going to the magic of FPC Deluxe, and some of the magic of one of the main magic point is cross compilation. What I'm going to do now, so as you can see, we have the 32-bit version. Yeah. So as you can see now on the screen, FPC Deluxe shows us that we have a correct install of FPC and Lazarus and one cross compile installed namely the cross compiler for the 64-bit version of Windows. Now I'm going to go to the cross tab because I want to cross-compile my program also for 64-bit versions of Linux. And I'm going to tell FPC Deluxe install this compiler. Well, that will fail because if you want to build such a compiler, you need two things. You need tools, binary tools that are suitable to make binaries for 64-bit version of Linux, and you need the libraries because in the linking process, the libraries are needed to guide FPC Deluxe to use the correct libraries when making this executable for the system. But I'm going to say yes to FPC Deluxe and it will do some magic. It will download the tools and it will download the libraries. And if it has done so, it will check again, and now it will continue its work because it has found in the correct location, and I will show you the tools and the libraries to be able to cross-compile towards Linux 64-bit. As you can see, inside the stable directory, there's now a new directory. It is called cross. It has two directories for the binary tools for the libraries. And if I go to the binary tools, I see it has made a directory especially for 64-bit Linux. And if I go inside, then I see that we find here a linker and an assembler and all kinds of tools that are needed to finally make an executable for Linux. The build script shows you how I made these tools, so you can also build them yourself. Now we go back to the cross directory, go to the libraries. Again, we see here a directory especially for 64-bit Linux, and we can see all kinds of libraries. So I picked those libraries for some from a Linux version, and I can see here I used Ubuntu 80.4%, a long-term support version. So I just, on my own computer, I made a virtual machine. I installed this version of Ubuntu and then extracted all those libraries. I zipped them. And if you install a cross-compiler for 64-bit Linux, it will download those libraries. So FPC and Lazarus are able to use them to make an executable. Also included are, as if I'm well, yes, also included is the Qt5 libraries for Lazarus, so you can also make Qt5 applications and also SDL2. So I try to include many libraries for many to be suitable for many applications. Okay, back to this table, back to FPC Deluxe. It's now building the packages. So please remember it very well. If you want to cross-compile to another system, you always need two things. You need binary tools that are suitable to make executables for that system you want to target, and you need the libraries, because without these it will not work. So binary tools and libraries. And FPC Deluxe will download them from the FPC Deluxe GitHub site if they are not found on the system, and make them available for you. All right, nearly there. All the packages are nearly there. And then if they are there, we can cross-compile towards 64-bit version of Linux. Right, we are ready. And let's see if we can make an executable with our install. So we have here our version of Lazarus. I'm putting a button. Let's see. This is just the Windows 32 bits naturally because I have none. So still working. Here we are. Okay, and I'm going to target the Windows, Linux, I mean. I'm going to target Linux. There we go, Linux. I'm going to target 64-bit. And now I'm not going to use one of these because I cannot run a Linux program in Windows. So I'm just going to go to this and I say compile. And that's now compiling. And we have all greens, and we can see here that we have a binary inside our install directory. So I'm going to look at it to make this a little bit cleaner. So we have here a projects directory, and you can see here we have a binary that is suitable for running on Linux. It is, this one. It's this one. This is the Windows binary, as you can see. And this is the Linux binary, but there's no clear distinguish. You cannot clearly distinguish between those binaries, so I will show you now how to do that. It's the next trick. Lazarus has so many nice tricks. It is very good to use those tricks. So this I'm going to copy like this. I'm going to copy it here, but I'm not going to place it in the lib. I'm going to make this the bin binary, and I'm going to call my project test project, something like this. Right, I press OK, and I'm going to run and compile and see if it has made. All right, I'm going to go back. We can now see here a binary directory, and a new directory is created for Linux 64-bit. And inside is my binary targeting a Linux. And now I'm going to show you another trick. We are going to go to compiler options. I'm going to click to add build mode. So I have now one build mode, and this build mode targets, it's on my default build mode, and it targets Linux, but I'm now going to give it its own name. And I'm going to call it Linux x64. And x64 is standing for AMD 64. And now, based on default, I'm going to make Win32. And now I'm going to make, based on default, I'm going to make a Win64. Okay, I've created a default, so there is a default build mode, and a build mode for targeting Linux, a build mode targeting Windows 32, and a build mode targeting Windows 64. I'm pressing OK, and now I can see I'm in the Win64. And I'm going to target. I have to do that. Win64, and the processor is right. I'm going to the build mode for Win32. I'm going to set it in for Win32, and its default processor is also okay, but just for this, I'm going to use the correct processor. I'm going to go to Linux. Linux 64 is still okay, and I'm going to define the default, and I make that default again. Okay, this is also default. Very easy. So I've made now build modes. Oh, it is an error by me. I'm going to go to the build modes. I made a mistake, I guess. X64. Okay. Now I'm showing you one beautiful thing of Lazarus, that is compile many modes. And now with one click, it will now use those build modes, Linux, to build my application. And let's see if it works. Okay, it says save the project, that's okay. So I'm now again in my project and I here in my binary directory, and if I'm going to this, I have a test project, and this is my 32-bit version for Windows, and if I go to this directory, this is my 64-bit version of my program, and if I'm here, I have my 64-bit application targeting Linux. So again, going back to Lazarus, with a single click, this is my application. It's very simple, it's a form and a button. And if I do this, and I do run compile many modus with a single click, I'm making executables targeting those 3 systems I have defined. Okay, 3 models were successfully compiled. And I will prove it to you, because I know you won't believe me. So this is an edit, and this is a T memo, and I will add something like, we have something beautiful, track bar, something, dialogues, command controls, this one, track bar. So because you don't believe me, I know, so I'm changing my application, and now I'm going to show you run compile many modes, and I'm compiling targeting those 3 systems. Give it some time. It's ready. And I'm going back to my binary directory, 64-bit. There we go. As we can see here, my 64-bit version of my application. And here I am in 32. This is my 32-bit version of my application, and naturally I have here as project 1 the 64-bit version of my Linux application, but I cannot show you because we don't have a Linux running here, but trust me. So as many people also have a Raspberry Pi, the final thing I'm going to do is install a cross-compiler for Raspberry Pi. Now Raspberry Pi is an ARM, so we go to ARM, Linux, because we are targeting Raspberry Pi for this, 32-bit. I could also target Raspberry Pi 4 if we are installing a 64-bit version of an operating system on the Raspberry, but I'm sticking now to the 32-bit. I say install compiler, and you will guess what will happen. It will fail because it cannot find the tools needed to make this cross compiler, because we only have the tools for 64-bit versions Linux. But I'm going to tell to Absurd Deluxe, just download them. I'm a lazy guy, get them from me. I prepare them, they are all coming from the GitHub repositories of Absurd Deluxe. Now, look here, we have a new directory with the binary tools, and we have here the linker and the assembler that are needed to build executables targeting the hard float 32-bit ARM versions targeting useful on the Raspberry Pi itself. And if I go to the libraries, we have here again an extra directory with all the libraries that are needed for linking, and I can have a look here at the actual library version, and again they are sourced from Ubuntu version 18.4.6. So we have the tools, we have the libraries, all installed for you by the magic of FPC Deluxe. And FPC Deluxe is now building the cross compiler targeting the Raspberry Pi, and you can see here, if I make this screen a little bit bigger, that it uses some special options that are very useful for the Raspberry Pi. It uses version 3 of the floating point library, it uses FastMath, and it uses the hard float. And that is, in most cases, these 3 settings allow for the best possible binary running on a Raspberry Pi 3. Again, it will consume some time naturally to install this cross compiler. We can have a look at the units. So we have here the units for, so click continue. Yeah, thank you. We have here the units for Windows 32. We have the units for Linux. completely filled. And we have the precompiled units. And here we have the first, the atrial. So it is also installing and building the runtime library targeting the Raspberry Pi. Let me see if we can find the cross-compiler targeting Raspberry Pi already. I think it's there. Yeah, it's already here. As you can see, this is the cross-compiler PPC cross ARM. So we have here the native compiler and the cross-compiler targeting the 64-bit version of Windows and Linux. And we have here the compiler that will target the ARM processor for the Raspberry Pi. Let me see. Okay, running well. Nearly finished installing all the packages in the correct directory. Everything going well. All systems green, as we could call it. Yeah, cleaning up. Alrighty, and we can look here if we have Linux. So we have everything is okay here. Okay, now I'm going to start Lazarus again. Nothing changed naturally. We have the project. Oh, cool. Okay, this is our project. It's smaller. And now I'm going again to the build modus, because that makes my life a lot easier. So we have here the build modus, and now I'm going to create a build mode targeting RPI. RPI32, I will call it. Okay. I have this build mode, RPI32, we are inside, and now I'm going to target. Linux is good, but the target has to be ARM for the 32-bit versions. Okay. Again, I'm going to use the nice trick. It's not needed at this moment, but I'm going to use the nice trick, and you see that RPI32 is added. I'm going to compile, and let me see if it works. As you can see here now, it's compiling the Lazarus things needed to get things running for the Raspberry Pi. Okay, it's now compiling for 64-bit version of Linux. It's now compiling for Windows 32-bit, and it's now compiling, and everything is okay. And I'm going to make it small again. I'm going to close. This is okay. I'm going to my projects directory and the binary directory. And I can see here it has created a nice executable, and that will run on your Raspberry Pi. So this is the beauty of Lazarus. With a single click, you create a binary for Raspberry Pi, for Linux, and Windows 64-bit and Windows 32-bit. And I can tell you on my own system, if I start FPC up Deluxe, on my normal install, I will see 25 cross compilers. And if I want to build FPC up Deluxe as a release version for you to use, I'm using a single click, targeting 32 systems with one click. And there's nothing in the world that can challenge that. So FPC and Lazarus are really very, very nice and good tools. Okay, starting it up, and we can see that in this stable directory, FPC of Deluxe sees that we have 3 cross compilers installed. Now, I'm not going to install more, but one of the most beautiful things of Lazarus and FPC is that it also can target Darwin. Darwin is a Mac OS, and you can target the new ARM64 processor of Darwin, or the normal Intel processor, or this you can also target, and you can even target the old PowerPC processor targeting Windows. You can install all kinds of cross compilers, and you can even these are, if you target this, You are compiling for a 20-year-old system of macOS, and it will run on that systems. So FPC Deluxe is specially suited for installing cross-compilers. Now the final thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to copy FPC Deluxe into the up directory of trunk, as you can see, and I'm starting up again. And because it's new, so it will ask you again about this, and I have to set the install path, and I'm going to install in trunk. And in trunk, I will install trunk in trunk, or I can just click the trunk button and it will do this for you. Due to my limited time, I'm going only to install only FPC for this time. This button, only FPC. No, because I only want to show you the principles of installing trunk and my principles of keeping installs separate. Okay, FPC Deluxe is now downloading the FPC sources for trunk, and that means in these sources here it will download the whole history of FPC. Here we have the FPC bootstrap. Now we have some tools that are needed at this point in time. Here we are again. It goes quicker than I had expected, but it's all okay naturally. It is now downloading the correct bootstrapper. And also working, and you can see here, you can follow live that it's downloading all kinds of tools needed. As we have done with the stable version, these tools are needed to build the trunk version. It might seem that it is double work, but we do it on purpose to keep two installs completely separate. So if I don't need stable anymore, I can just right click it and say delete, and then the whole install of FPC and Lazarus is gone from my hard drive, and then the only thing I have to do then is delete this shortcut to this stable version. But I'm not going to do that naturally because I will lose my nice install of Lazarus stable and FPC stable. All right, so it's now going to clean the FPC trunk version. Let me see if everything is all right. Yep, the symbolic name is 3.3.1 with all kinds of numbers, and the GitLab number is this for the trunk version of FPC. So I think it's now clear how FPC Deluxe works, what it can do for you, and there are the two main things that that are the excellent points of FPC Deluxe is that you can easily install cross compilers, as you have seen yourself, and that you can easily install 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 different installs of FPC and Lazarus on your system, and they will not influence each other. So in these two cases, I would advise you to use FPC Deluxe. If you are only interested in installing the stable versions of Lazarus and FPC, please use the normal downloads from the FPC or the Lazarus website, because they will give you the best fitted install for your system. And they are made by the developers of FPC and Lazarus. But in some special cases, again, when you want to cross-compile in an easy way, or when you want to have a few different installs, like I'm doing now with stable and trunk, it would be good to use FPC Deluxe. Now, in the meantime, while we are building the trunk version, I'm going to back to the stable version, to the binary directory of FPC. I'm going to show you the configuration file. It's one of the most important things of FPC, the way FPC Deluxe changes that to be able to cross-compile. So everything from here to above is more or less the standard configuration file, and here you see what FPC Deluxe has done. Here it can detect that it has a cross-compiler targeting Windows 64. Here you can see that it has a cross compiler targeting Linux 64. Here you can see that it uses the binary tools in this directory. Here you can see that it uses for this target the libraries found in this directory. And we have also installed a cross compiler targeting the Raspberry Pi. As you can see here, Linux, CPU ARM. You can see here the special settings so that it runs well on that operating system. Again, you can see here that it uses the tools inside the crossbin ARM Linux directory. And here you can see it uses the libraries in the crosslib ARM Linux directory. So it is always, I will always advise people who want to do their own research for this to look at this receipt and CFG file to see how FPC up the Luxor does it, so you can learn from it and perhaps one day set up a cross compilation for yourself on your own system if you want to do so, because this is all standard. Okay, we are going back to the trunk directory. Nothing special yet here. No. And it is compiling the FPC trunk version. As a side note, many people send issue reports if they are installing trunk versions of FPC or Lazarus towards FPC up deluxe. But most cases these issues are caused by the trunk versions themselves, because they are changing on a daily basis, sometimes even on an hourly basis, and they will fail whenever the developers think it's needed to change something in the sources. So it would be good not to report those trunk problems and for FPC and Lazarus towards FPC at Deluxe, but just report them on the forum or directly to the developers. Okay. So the utilities are installed. And here we have finished all the work. So now if we go to we are here again, we are here in the trunk directory. I'm going to the FPC binary directory. All kinds of things have been placed. We go to everything, and here we have an FPC executable and the normal compiler. And let me see if I do this. No, there's no way to open a terminal here, but if I had a terminal, I could show you that we have the correct version of FPC, namely 3.3.1. Okay, because I have still some time, I don't know if it will work. Again, as I told you, trunk versions may fail any moment. I'm going to install the trunk version of Lazarus itself, because then you can see that if it succeeds, but I don't know because it can fail, as I told you, then we will have here two Lazarus icons. One, if you double click it, it will start stable, and another one that will start Lazarus trunk together with FPC trunk. So it's always a surprise if it will work today. If it will not work today, it will work later today, or perhaps tomorrow, or perhaps next week. But it's always have always to wait if you use the trunk versions. As you can see, the size, we saw the size of stable was 400 megabytes, and we see here the size of the trunk, because the whole history is also downloaded, is around 600 megabytes. So due to the fact that with trunk it is needed to download the whole history of FPC and also the whole history of Lazarus. I don't know why this is red, but okay. the downloads are bigger, so the whole install is a bit bigger. It will consume more space on your hard disk. Okay, let me see. Again, it is always the same. It's now building, using the make file of Lazarus, it's now building the last build. And if that is finished, last build, then it will use this last build to build Lazarus itself. And if that succeeds, it will create a nice desktop icon here. I think we are lucky this time, because when I look at the screen, we see all green, still all green. So today we are lucky because we can compile. Yes, yes. We can compile the trunk version of Lazarus with the trunk version of FPC today. But again, this can fail tomorrow because of changes, rapid changes in FPC and Lazarus. The same things that were happening in the stable version are now again happening in the trunk version. It installs some standard packages that I find interesting. Charge, and the database packages and the datetime controls. Okay. It's now building. Yep, the use specified packages. Yep, again, it's now building FPC debug, the new debugger. All right, it has succeeded in building the trunk version of Lazarus, and I'm going to close FPC up Deluxe. And as I promised you, I have two icons on my desktop, one telling you we can run Lazarus stable and one telling you we can run the Lazarus trunk, and I'm going to double click it, the trunk version. And we are keeping our thumbs crossed, and we have a working version. Let's see if I'm correct about Lazarus. Yes, we have version 3.99 and FPC version 3.3.1. And let me see if it works like this. And it has worked. It has created a working 32-bit Windows version of our application. Closing it, not saving. Okay, so again, you have seen the two most important things, the functionality of FPC Deluxe, namely installing different versions of FPC and Lazarus on one system without any hassles or without any changes into your system, except for an install inside a single directory. And to split things the good way, in my opinion, I give every install its own version of FPC Deluxe, so that I will never make any mistakes in what it targets. So this version of FPC Deluxe targets the trunk, and you see there's no Crosscompiler installed this moment, and it tells you we are in trunk. And if I go to the stable, to my up directory, and I start FPC Deluxe, it will show you we have two stable installs, FPC and Lazarus, and we have some cross compilers here installed. So I keep my things separate. This is it. This is FPC Deluxe giving you separate installs, isolated in their own directory, and a very easy way of creating cross compilers and downloading the binary tools that are needed to build those cross compilers and to build applications that will run on your systems that you are targeting with these cross compilers. So I hope you have enjoyed it, and please be a happy user of FPC and Lazarus and be proud of us. Thank you.